Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Dave's Faves. And now, today, we're talking about number 103, actually, of the series, the Debussy and Ravel string quartets. Those glorious works that often seem maybe always now, often come coupled together on one disc. So that's how I'm doing it. It's my favorite version of having them both together on one disc. And maybe if I see something or I'm reminded of something where you've got one separately, we'll toss that in later in the series. But, everyone's got to have a Debussy and Ravel. I mean, you have to. And they are two of the most beautiful quartets ever written. I mean, they're fabulous and the only ones that their respective composers wrote. And so they make a natural coupling. And my choice is the Quartetto Italiano on Philips. What can I say? First of all, I mean, they've recorded, actually, they did these up for EMI too, I think. But, Debussy and Ravel get coupled together. They don't actually sound that similar, except for the scherzos. The scherzos are both pizzicato frolics. The Debussy is like plonk, 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 da 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 da, ba da 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 da, plonk, 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 plonk. And then the viola goes do 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 do, ba da do 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 do, which is actually the motto theme of the entire quartet, because it's a Frankian dandy style piece with encyclical form, with that recurring theme throughout. And then you're plugging blah, 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 blah. Oh, it's just wonderful. Wonderful. I remember the Emerson Quartet did it as an encore once when I was in college. I saw them. And oh gosh, it was so beautiful. It was just wonderful. It's the best thing in the concert. They were wonderful generally, but that was really cool. And the Ravel. Well, the Ravel has the other pizzicato scherzo, blam blah blam blam blah blam 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 blah blah blam blah blah blam blam blah 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 blah, like that one, da 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 da. Now that also sort of has a motto theme. They're kind of related, the tunes. They're wonderful, but other than that, they're actually not very similar. I think it's interesting. That's the similarity. That's why I think people tend to associate them musically as together, but they don't sound that much the same otherwise. The Ravel is in some ways a more purely lyrical work than the Debussy is. The Debussy is a more emotionally turbulent work than the Ravel is, especially in the first movements. The Ravel is wholly lyrical without much contrast between the first and second subject. The Debussy, on the other hand, is far more passionate. And for that reason, people think it's like a little bit more immature. I don't know. I don't go there. All I know is that they are glorious pieces of music. And I'll never forget an old High Fidelity review, I think it was, where the critic talked about, and I think very, very wisely, how performances of the Ravel and Debussy quartets could fall into two big categories, lumpers and splitters. And the lumpers sort of group the two works together and play them somewhat similarly, while the splitters highlight the differentiation between the two. I happen to think that the Italiano falls into the splitter category, which actually makes the performances more interesting to me. I mean, lumpers can be gorgeous. We like lumps. But the splitters sort of, for continuous listening, if that's what your mood is, it's better to have the contrast. But the bottom line with the Quartetto Italiano is just they're so damn beautiful. They were like the Claudio Arrau of the string quartet world. You know what I mean? So they had a sonority that was always beautiful. And they could play hard, and they could play rhythmic, and they could play with dynamics and with passion, but without ever making an ugly tone. And today, I think it's really salutary to hear their approach to music making. It was so cultured, it was so civilized, but it was also urgent and exciting. And they didn't have to be vulgar or crude or sound like they were killing a herd of cats. I mean, today with the period instrument stuff and all that garbage with gut strings and no vibrato and all this stuff, we don't care. We no longer care how ugly the tone is. And I've been getting disc after disc after disc to review of, Haydn quartets, particularly classical quartets by one group after another that are so freaking ugly. They're a disgrace, a disgrace to the aesthetic that Haydn represented and to which his music aspired, whether or not they could realize it in his time. And the same thing is true here. Who wants to hear the Debussy and Ravel quartets played a la period orthodoxy these days? Which is wrong, by the way. We have some very early performances of these works, and, sonic limitations notwithstanding, the Quartetto Italiano was around for a long time, and they knew what the aesthetic was. They just raised everything to a higher standard in terms of their technical ability to play their instruments and to play as an ensemble. And that is why I adore, this is on Decca now, it was on Philips, I don't know if it's still around, but the Quartetto Italiano in Debussy and Ravel, not just for their great Debussy and Ravel, but for everything that they represented in the aesthetics of superior ensemble string playing. Yeah! So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. And check out the Dave's Faves playlist. This is number 103. We're getting up there. Take care.